Your muscles are key to your ability to move. They're key to your ability to function, to do the things that you really enjoy to do. And our muscles work in a variety of different ways. I want to talk to you a little bit about the three main different muscle contraction types that we can have. You might be an individual who loves to work out at the gym. Maybe you've seen some of these different things going on and wondered, why are they doing that? How is that actually targeting the muscle differently, and is that important? Or you might be a person who's just interested in ways that you might be able to train some of these things on your own to get started. The first muscle contraction type that we talk about is called an isometric contraction. Iso meaning same, metric meaning length. This is same length. So these are those things that you might see happening where a person looks like they're working really, really hard, but they're not moving at all. Okay? Maybe you've seen someone do a plank and they start shaking a little bit and they start breathing really heavy. Their muscles aren't moving, their joints aren't moving, there's no motion present. And you're thinking, man, can they really be working that hard in an isometric contraction? And the answer is yes, they can. That's actually a contraction type that requires a lot of force from our muscles, a lot of interaction with us in the ground to hold our position. One of my favorite examples of an isometric contraction is something like a wall sit, where you kind of place yourself down, you get into that seated position, but there's no chair there. And you just have to hold that position for as long as you possibly can. And what's actually happening in this motion is that gravity wants to kind of collapse you down to the floor. That's that force that really wants to just pull us down into the earth. But what we do is we engage our muscles in a way to kind of generate an upward force or a ground reaction force to kind of overcome or equal that gravity. And when it's equal to that gravitational force, we get what's called an isometric contraction where we have no movement. Again, lots of force going on here, lots of work by our muscles, but it's something that doesn't actually create the motion that we often see. That's one of the ways we contract. The other way we can contract is with what we call a concentric muscle contraction. And this is actually one where the muscles are going to shorten to create a force to help us maybe move really fast or typically move against the force of gravity. This might look something like when you stand up out of a chair, you actually contract your quadricep muscles, or that big muscle down the front of your thigh. You're gonna actually contract it and shorten it to straighten your leg up and allow you to stand up. Concentric muscle contractions typically are things that are working against gravity. So when we jump up in the air, when we stand up, when we walk forward, right? These are things where muscles are trying to shorten to create motion that we want. Okay? And again, these are things that you might see in the gym a lot, right? Someone grabs a dumbbell and curls their arm up. The up phase would be the concentric portion, the shortening portion of that muscle. Now the third one is probably the most confusing one. And if you're a student who's in an anatomy class or microkinesiology class or biomechanics or exercise science, this is the one that trips you up a lot, which is this idea of an eccentric muscle contraction. This is actually where muscles can actually lengthen to create force. And while it's not a perfect example, I think an example I like is actually kind of how when you stretch out a rubber band, you can kind of almost see some tension start to appear in that rubber band. And our muscles can create force that way too. And that actually looks like things like us sitting down in a chair, the down phase of a squat movement. Typically, it's us trying to utilize our muscles to kind of control gravity so gravity doesn't just make us flop down in the ground. Now, eccentric muscle contractions are actually the ones that kind of generate and damage and create the most force in our muscles. If you've ever watched a parent or grandparent sit down, you might see them go into a chair. They position the chair behind them, and then they kind of start to go down in, and then at some point, it's almost like their muscles turn off and they just, bam, collapse right in the ground. And when they collapse in the ground, it's because as those muscles start to lengthen out and create that eccentric muscle contraction, the muscles are like, wait, I don't want to work this hard. I don't have the strength or capacity to work this hard. So they just release all that tension and they go down in the ground. You don't really experience that if maybe you're a younger or trained individual, but you do feel that maybe after a really heavy weightlifting day where your legs are really sore and you almost feel like, man, I'm moving like my 85-year-old grandpa. And that's what's happened, right? You kind of are. So these are the three different types of muscle contractions. Eccentric, muscle lengthening to try and support us and make sure that gravity doesn't just move us around at its will. Concentric muscle contractions where we're shortening muscles to create force to generate movements and fast movements. And then isometric contractions where nothing's happening, right? We're definitely generating a lot of force, but our joints aren't moving and there isn't any movement present. all of them are really important in your training. All of them have key goals. Concentric, because that's a lot of how we move in our activities of daily living. Eccentric muscle contractions are really important because those sitting downs and the controls of the gravity are really important. And in fact, isometric might be some of the most important, especially if you're someone who's trying to reduce risk for injuries, because a lot of recent research is suggesting that isometrics can be a great way to train and strengthen ligaments and tendons that often get injured. So when you look at these muscle contractions, make sure you're incorporating all of them into the things that you do. A little bit of pushing up, a little bit of staying in position, and a little bit of coming down as a way to train all of the muscle contractions that we utilize in our body.